The first stage of the medical reform scheme was unveiled today, proposing to kickstart a consultative body within the year to discuss how many doctors will be needed, amid doctors opposing expanding medical school enrollment quotas. Industrial output fell for the third straight month in July, affected by weaker demand for chips and automobiles. Japan is hit by the strong Typhoon Sansan, which has left 4 people dead, dozens injured, and forced millions to evacuate. It's August 30th, 6 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We start with new action plans unveiled by a special healthcare reform committee. First up is the launch of a special discussion body consisting of doctors, nurses, and patients to figure out the appropriate number of future doctors. Lee Si-hoo has this report.
The South Korean government is taking its first steps to reform the nation's healthcare system, one of the key areas of the Yoon administration's 4+1 reform plans. On Friday, the Special Presidential Committee on Healthcare Reform announced that it's launching a discussion body of doctors, nurses, patients, and professionals from other relevant sectors to come up with a reasonable estimate of the supply and demand of doctors based on scientific evidence and public acceptance.
We plan to launch the discussion body this year so that we can carry out mid to long-term policies considering future healthcare demands.
If, in the process, the doctors provide a rational alternative to the government's current plans for medical school enrollment quota increase, the government says they could potentially discuss the quota for year 2026 admissions with the doctors. The 2026 quota has not yet been finalized amid disputes between the government and doctors who oppose the increase. Further efforts will be made to provide better working conditions for trainee doctors by shortening their standard working hours from the current 80 per week to 60 by the year 2031. Starting next year, the hours will be decreased to 72. Other plans include changing hospital structures so that larger facilities can focus on patients in critical conditions. All this while the government drastically increases its financial input.
Over the next 5 years, we'll put in more than 20 trillion won in intensive support of medical care reform.
The money will be allotted for medical training and R&D, essential care services, and to help those going through medical malpractice or accident disputes. Back in February, the government announced a package of medical policies, including the medical school enrollment size increase from 3,058 students a year to 5,058 in its plans to yield up to 10,000 new doctors by 2035. Since then, those in the field, especially medical students and doctors in training, have gone on leave, causing a significant shortage of medical personnel in essential and emergency care. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
The summer COVID resurgence, which had seen a notable increase since July, now seems to be slowing down. Our Ian, he looks into what precautions are needed as we navigate the post-peak phase.
The trend of COVID-19 cases increasing has now shifted, with numbers declining over the past week. Health authorities now believe that the summer wave has passed its peak, despite earlier concerns that COVID-19 cases would likely peak in late August. According to the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency on Friday, emergency rooms treated just over 8,000 people for COVID-19 during the 4th week of August. This shows a decrease of more than 5,000 compared to the previous week. Health officials explained that while the number of emergency room visits rose from July, the growth rate slowed around the 3rd week and then declined throughout the following week. The agency's recent data also indicated a decline in COVID-19 hospitalizations, with around 1,100 people admitted in the 4th week of August. This represents a roughly 20% decrease from the week before. However, the director of the KDCA, Yang Jin-sun, stresses a few important precautions to keep in mind.
Starting in October, a new COVID-19 vaccination will be available. We urge seniors aged 65 and older, as well as those in high-risk facilities like nursing homes, to get vaccinated to prepare for potential winter surges. Additionally, during the Chuseok holiday, when visiting elderly family members, please follow all safety guidelines carefully.
With Korea's Chuseok holiday just a few weeks away, Director Yang asked for extra caution to ensure that the situation stabilizes quickly. She urged the public to adhere to COVID-19 prevention guidelines, including washing hands properly and regularly, maintaining proper cough etiquette, and wearing masks if experiencing respiratory symptoms. Lee Eun-hee, Arirang News.
Moving on, the index indicating the country's industrial production fell for the third straight month in July, affected by weaker demand for chips and cars. Moon Hae-ryun has the figures.
South Korea's industrial production contracted for 3 consecutive months, reflecting sluggish domestic demand. According to data released by Statistics Korea on Friday, industry production decreased by 0.4% in July compared to the previous month. After a 1.4% increase in April, industry production has been on a downward trend, declining by 0.8% in May and 0.1% in June. A breakdown of the data showed that production in certain sectors such as public administration and services showed an increase, but production in manufacturing shrunk significantly. Mining and manufacturing production overall fell by 3.6% from the previous month, marking the largest drop since December 2022. Manufacturing production alone showed a downswing of 3.8% due to dwindling semiconductor and automobile production. Semiconductor production decreased by 8% and automobile production decreased by more than 14%, with the latter being the largest drop since May 2020. The downswing was attributed to factors including labor strikes at auto parts companies and is likely to be a temporary downturn.
Due to the record-high semiconductor production last month, we can expect a base effect. Nevertheless, the semiconductor industry remains strong, driven by demand for IT devices and growth in AI-related sectors.
Retail sales, which indicate trends in goods consumption, also decreased by 1.9%. After declining in April and May and rebounding in June, retail sales declined again in July, showing a volatile trend. Facility investment, on the other hand, increased by more than 10% for the second consecutive month, driven by the transportation sector. The government plans to accelerate efforts to revitalize the domestic economy by swiftly implementing key policies from its Chuseok livelihood stabilization measures, including boosting domestic tourism and providing 3 types of tax incentives to stimulate consumption. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
South Korea's tax revenue rose in July for the first time in 5 months. Data from the Finance Ministry on Friday show that revenue rose 1.2 trillion won, or nearly $900 million last month compared to the previous year to around $30 billion. This marks the first time since February that the government has seen a year-on-year rise on a monthly basis. The ministry mainly attributed this to an increase in value-added and corporate taxes. However, for the first 7 months of the year, revenue fell $6.5 billion compared to 2023. Japan is hit by a strong typhoon. Sansan has left 4 people dead, forced millions to evacuate, and destroyed property. Our An Sung-jin brings the latest.
Typhoon Sansan continued its journey across Japan on Friday, causing torrential rain and disrupting transportation. The storm has been dubbed one of the strongest typhoons ever to hit the country. Sansan first made landfall on the island of Kyushu on Thursday, and though it had weakened by Friday morning, winds of up to 126 kilometers per hour were still blowing as it moved northeast across the archipelago. The typhoon has taken the lives of at least 4 people, including a family of 3, and dozens have been injured as the strong winds and rain destroyed everyday infrastructure. More than 4 million people had been advised to evacuate, and authorities have been issuing their highest alerts for some areas. The Japanese Meteorological Agency said parts of Kyushu saw record rain, with some areas receiving double the monthly average. A special warning was issued by the JMA on Wednesday before the typhoon made landfall, marking the first time in 2 years that such a warning has been issued.
This typhoon is scary. In terms of a disaster, we are getting a large amount of rain, so I don't know what will happen going forward. I really hope everyone will stay safe.
Transportation has been disrupted, including bullet trains, ferry, and rail services, as well as airlines, with Japan Airlines and All Nippon Airways canceling more than 600 of their flights for Friday. The strong winds and torrential rain also knocked out power in many regions, closing major automobile factories run by Toyota, Nissan, and Honda. The weather agency warned that the typhoon will bring heavy rain and strong winds to many parts of the country into the weekend. The JMA also called for people to be on high alert for landslides, flooding of low-lying areas, and overflowing rivers and strong winds. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Over in the U.S., Vice President Kamala Harris says she would appoint a Republican to her cabinet if elected during her first press interview as the Democratic presidential nominee. Her Republican rival, Donald Trump, was quick to criticize her. Cha Yun-kyung has more.
Vice President Harris sat down with CNN for an interview just as Trump was criticizing her tendency to avoid such encounters with the press. During the interview, Harris said that she spent 2 terms as the Attorney General of California, prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, violations of American laws regarding the illegal passage of guns, drugs, and human beings across the border, reiterating that her value has not changed. She also mentioned that it is important to have those who have different views, different experiences when the most important decisions are being made. She said it would be beneficial for the American public to have a member of her cabinet who is a Republican. In the meantime, former U.S. President Trump mostly criticized Harris severely while he delivered remarks on the economy at a campaign event in Michigan, which is one of the swing states. Trump said Harris was incompetent since she had not done an interview in months. Trump also called Harris the greatest flip-flopper for changing her positions, adding that she was a communist. Meanwhile, opinion polls conducted after Robert F. Kennedy Jr. withdrew his candidacy as a third party showed the outcome was too close to call in 7 swing states in the U.S. In the polls, Harris and Trump shared the states with 3 wins each and 1 draw, showing that no one was guaranteed victory. Harris, who did her first press interview as a Democratic presidential nominee, is focusing on preparing for the presidential hopeful debate with Trump, which will be held in 10 days. Cha Yun-kyung, Arirang News.
The U.S. National Security Advisor wrapped up his rare trip to China, where he underscored U.S. commitment to complete the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Choi Min-jung explains.
U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan reaffirmed Washington's commitment to complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula during his talks with his Chinese counterparts in Beijing. The remarks were made at a press conference on Thursday as Sullivan wrapped up his 3-day visit to China. It also came amid concerns over the lack of reference to denuclearizing the Korean Peninsula from both U.S. Democratic and Republican parties at the recent national conventions. Sullivan also stressed the importance of maintaining peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait and that Washington's One China policy has not changed. High-level talks were held between the 2 countries to seek stability in their relations. Chinese President Xi Jinping met with Sullivan on Thursday and expressed hope that the U.S. would work with China to get along.
Although great changes have taken place in the respective conditions of the 2 countries and in China-U.S. relations, China's commitment to the stable, sound and sustainable development of China-U.S. relations remains unchanged.
Sullivan told Xi that U.S. President Joe Biden was committed to managing Washington-Beijing ties to avoid conflict. The effort comes ahead of the upcoming U.S. presidential election.
We are committed to maintaining high-level diplomacy, and to this end, President Biden looks forward to engaging with you again in the coming weeks.
The U.S. official hinted that Biden and Xi plan to speak over the phone in the coming weeks and possibly meet in person at APEC and the G20 summits slated for November. Sullivan arrived in Beijing on Tuesday on a 3-day visit, marking the first trip by a U.S. national security advisor in 8 years. Choi Min-jang, Arirang News.
Over in the Middle East, Israel and Hamas have agreed to temporarily suspend some military operations in Gaza to allow children to be vaccinated for polio. Lee Eun-jin tells us more.
On Thursday, the World Health Organization said that the Israeli military and Palestinian militant group have agreed to pauses in fighting in Gaza to allow the administering of polio vaccines to some 640,000 children under the age of 10. Starting on September 1st, the pause will take place in 3 separate stages over 3-day periods. Vaccinations will first be administered in the central Gaza region for 3 days, followed by South Gaza and then North Gaza. Each phase of the vaccination campaign is expected to take around 7 hours between the hours of 6 a.m. and 3 p.m. local time.
Without humanitarian pauses, as we call it as the UN, a campaign delivery, which is already implemented in incredible, constrained, complex environments, will not be possible. So I want to continue a little bit in response to this commitment of this area-specific humanitarian pauses. So it has been agreed that the campaign will be delivered in a phased approach over 3 days. So
Rick Pieperkorn, the World Health Organization's representative for the West Bank and Gaza, said that the two sides have also agreed to extend the pause to a 4th day if necessary in each zone. He added that it would be a 2-round vaccination campaign with a 4-week interval between the first and second doses. 1.26 million doses of polio vaccines have already arrived in Gaza. On August 23rd, the WHO confirmed that at least 1 baby had been paralyzed by the type 2 polio virus, which makes it the first such case in the region in 25 years. A Hamas official said that they were ready to cooperate with international organizations in support of the vaccine campaign for the more than 650,000 Palestinian children. And the Israeli military's humanitarian unit said that the vaccination campaign would be conducted in coordination with the Israeli military. Health experts say that at least 90% of coverage is needed during each round of the campaign in order to stop the outbreak and prevent the international spread of polio. Lee Eun-jin, Arirang News.
Most of the Koreans who recently traveled to Israel to attend a religious event have returned home. The Foreign Ministry said around 140 Koreans who were visiting Israel have safely left the country. They were among 180 people who entered the country last week, ignoring the travel warning issued for the region. The ministry strongly urged those remaining in Israel to leave as soon as possible. Amid escalating tensions in the region, a level 4 travel ban, the highest on South Korea's travel warning system, has been issued for the border area between Israel and Lebanon. A level 3 ban is in place for the rest of the two countries. Over in Paris, Team Korea has secured at least 2 bronze medals in the men's doubles table tennis at the 2024 Paralympics. Korea's 2 teams, one of Cha Soo-young and Park Jin-cheol and the other of Jang Young-jin and Park Sung-ju, have both won their quarterfinals and advanced to the semifinals. Cha and Park secured a 3-0 victory over an Italian team, while Jang and Park defeated a British team by the same score. There is no bronze medal playoff in Paralympics, so both losing semifinalists are guaranteed a bronze medal. If both Korean teams win their semifinal matches against Slovakia and France on Friday, they will face each other in the final. Hobbies show no concerns regarding gender distinctions, and nowadays this looks to be the case for those involving exercise, including sports, where such stereotypes may still exist. Our Choi So-hyung tells the story.
A private ballet academy in Gwangjin-gu district in Seoul. 42-year-old Seo Yun-ho, who is a government official, has been learning ballet for 7 years.
About 10 years ago, I watched a ballet performance and thought it was really great. Most of the people I watched together with were also doing ballet as a hobby, and they encouraged me to try it too.
He said a 90-minute class burns as many calories as a football game. Within just 5 minutes of starting, his whole body is already covered in sweat. As the only man in the evening class, Seo said he doesn't have time to feel embarrassed or think about being the only male.
As you can see, I'm sweating a lot. There's no time to think about others. I'm too busy just doing ballet. They are just my colleagues, that's all. I don't really worry about it. I just dance hard without thinking much, like everyone else.
Kim Min-kyung, the director of Paralympics, said that more men are asking about ballet lately, either to fix their body shape or simply because they love dancing. She added that men can start ballet in shorts and a t-shirt, just like in any other fitness activity.
Men often hesitate because of the outfit at first, but you can wear whatever feels comfortable, just like when you're in a fitness center. Ballet has many benefits like improving posture, so I highly recommend it for men too.
The distinction between calm and intense exercises is now just a matter of looks. At a Brazilian jiu-jitsu academy named Movement in the Seocho district of Seoul, the place was packed with people learning various techniques.
Recently, many women have become interested in martial arts, so many have started taking classes in sports like boxing and jiu-jitsu.
Master Im To said that about 40% of his students are women currently, as interest in self-defense has grown.
Due to hormonal differences, it is generally not easy for women to beat men in physical combat in martial arts. But in jiu-jitsu, you learn technical skills that can overcome these physical gaps. So it's often said to be a sport where women can beat men. I think that's why more women are interested in it as a self-defense sport.
Kim Mi-ji, who has been practicing jiu-jitsu for 6 years, said it helped her regain a healthy lifestyle and become more energetic. She understands why some women might feel uncomfortable about the inevitable contact between bodies in jiu-jitsu.
Since it's a sport mostly done by men, people often ask how I can do it with such body contact. But it's really just exercise. In fact, it's more fun for women because it gives you the confidence to handle yourself in any dangerous situation. I think that makes it even more enjoyable.
Susan, who has been living in South Korea for 7 years, has spent most of her free time here practicing jiu-jitsu.
I highly recommend it to everybody, especially to women, because I think it's very empowering and you really realize the strength that you have and you may not realize that you have it.
The common understanding that personal beauty and confidence don't require gender distinctions is becoming one of the reasons gender boundaries in hobbies are fading out. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
Autumn really seems to be around the corner. It feels relatively cool in the morning. However, the heat of summer still remains during the day. Tomorrow, the heat will continue to be around 33 degrees Celsius in Seoul and other western regions. Except for the East Coast, a heat wave warning is still in place, and the daytime temperatures continue to be hot. On the other hand, the East Coast region being affected by easterly winds will slow down the heat, with Sokcho at 27 degrees. Tomorrow, most areas will start off at 22 to 25 degrees. Highs will move up to 33 in Seoul, Chuncheon, and Gwangju, Daejeon and Daegu, 34 degrees. The daytime temperature in Seoul is expected to temporarily fall below 30 degrees on Monday due to rain in the Seoul metropolitan area, Gangwon-do, and Gyeongsang-buk-do provinces. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
And that is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session coming up.